Cairn Cycles is a sub-brand of the Rider firm, which among other things owns Hunt bike wheels. I recently had a chance to ride a pre-production version of the gravel adventure e-bike and finished the day very, very impressed. Before we actually get into what the bike is and what it's like to ride, it's probably useful to discuss why you might want an e-gravel bike in the first place. Cairn are pitching the bike as the ideal platform for riders who want to do long distance tours without relying on a car on the weekend. The addition of e-assistance means that longer distances, perhaps into more remote and challenging terrain, can be tackled, which is a deeply appealing proposition. Now, I'm sure you're all chomping at the bit, waiting to load up in the comments saying how this is going to get riders into potentially sticky situations, which might be true, but I don't necessarily think that's an issue with the bike, and more in the choices that riders might make. The bike is built around Fazua's motor, which can deliver up to 400 watts of assistance. This isn't quite as much as competing systems from Shimano or Bosch would offer, but in the experience of myself and other BikeRadar testers, it tends to deliver a more natural feeling level of assistance. The Fazua motor is also relatively unique in that it's completely removable. So the battery and motor are held within one removable unit, and this attaches to the gearbox, which is located around the bottom bracket, using a kind of clover-shaped, really nicely machined joint. It's also much lighter than other systems, coming in at 4.7 kilos. We've seen the bike used in a few models from Pinarello and Focus, to name a few, and it's one we're seeing a lot more traction building up for in the wider market. As you are able to remove both the battery and motor in one go, you can get the bike feeling a little bit more like a normal bike if you remove it. And with that in mind, Cairn has also developed a kind of blanking box which can sit in the place of the motor and battery. It's nigh on impossible to give an accurate range for an e-bike system regardless of the system, but Cairn reckons that in ideal conditions you're probably going to get about 90 kilometers out of a single charge. For longer rides, Cairn is also considering offering additional battery packs which could be fitted on the seat tube, and also even more batteries which could be mounted to anything mounts on the fork. This is a really cool prospect and could open up all sorts of terrain to this sort of bike. It's worth stressing that I rode a pre-production version of the bike, so details will likely change a little bit before production, but overall DNA will remain the same. Geometry-wise, the bike doesn't present anything particularly radical, with a 71-degree head angle, a 73-degree seat angle, and a 1030mm wheelbase in a size large. One of the coolest features of the build, and something that will make production, is the dropper post. This is activated by a modified left-hand SRAM shifter, and it's something we're seeing on a number of production gravel bikes now, and is something I expect to see more of in the future. Final specs are still to be concluded, but my bike came fitted with a SRAM Force 1 by group set, Hunt's 650B Adventure Sport wheels, which were fitted with a set of Panaracer Gravel King SK tyres in a 2.1-inch width. All of this is matched with a set of Ritchie Venture Max WCS bars, which came in at very wide. And the build, as pictured, came in at 16 kilos, with initial pricing expected to be around the £3,000 mark. Cairn Cycles were kind enough to come through to Bristol, which meant I could try out the bike on familiar trails, roads and fire roads. It had actually been a while since I'd previously been on an e-bike, and I was quickly reminded just how confidence-inspiring it is being on an e-bike and moving through traffic, where you're much more able to move away from traffic lights easily, and it's just a less stressful experience overall. Of course, this bike isn't designed for weaving through traffic, it's designed for off-road shenanigans, and my goodness did I enjoy those shenanigans. Having that power on tap means you can nail single track so much faster than you would be able to otherwise, and big, steep, gnarly, chundery fire road climbs are dispatched with great ease. Having the extra weight of an e-bike motor located so low in the bike also means that it is just stupendously stable and incredibly forgiving for that, with all sorts of reckless behaviour easily accommodated. When this is matched with those 2.1-inch wide 650B wheels, it means you can hit really rough lines without really worrying about too much. And I have to say, if I was given the option between 650B or 700C wheels, I would definitely be going for the smaller wheels on an e-bike, as the extra heft of chunky tyres doesn't really matter on an e-bike. Of course, the build isn't everything. Geometry has a lot to play in this, and that slightly more nimble handling with the relatively traditional geometry didn't really hold back the bike, and I think that Cairn have really nailed things here. On corners, the bike feels very capable, and the wide Ritchie bars definitely help with this. And I've actually used these bars on different bikes before, and I wasn't too keen on them. The super wide feel just doesn't suit the way I like to ride off-road, but with that slightly heavier bike, they make much more sense. That low centre of gravity that I also mentioned definitely helps in the corners as well. The additional weight does, of course, though, mean the bike is a little bit harder to flick about than a regular bike. Compared to something like the Orbea Gain, which I rode last year, with its hub-based motor, it's definitely a lot easier. The dropper post was also very welcome on the bike. This is actually the first gravel bike I've ridden with a dropper post, and just like on a mountain bike, it means that handling on steeper or rougher terrain just isn't compromised, and it's something I really hope we're going to see more of in gravel bikes in the future. Something I would speculate as well is, given how much better they make the riding experience, I think it's only a matter of time until, say, SRAM come out with a dedicated dropper post solution for gravel bikes, but that is pure speculation at this point. I will stress, even though the point has been made a million times before, that at the top of all of these steep climbs, I was just as puffed out as I would have been on a normal bike, the only difference being that I'd got there in half the time. So just remember, it's e-assistance, not a throttle. The only thing I did find a bit of an issue on the bike was the 175mm long cranks. These wouldn't normally be an issue with a regular gravel bike, but because the e-bike encourages you to pedal through rougher terrain, I found pedal strikes were a bit of an issue. We have actually found this to be a relatively common complaint on e-mountain bikes as well, and Cairn said that come production it is entirely possible that they may go for shorter cranks, even down to 170 or maybe even 165mm, because as you have that e-assistance, pedaling efficiency isn't quite as critical as on an unassisted bike. I will also say that the carbon cranks, although very lovely, wouldn't be my choice, with alloy and that kind of hardy nature that comes with them probably being preferable over the lower weight. I also found the difference between the Breeze, Eco, and River, Tour, modes on the Fazua system to be a little bit vague. Cairn was again keen to stress that there will be a level of user customization available, with further modification to the modes and how they work available via Cairn and Fazua themselves. I have to say, I went into this experience, for one, pretty surprised that the rider firm was spreading its wings into the bike market. They've done all sorts of interesting things with their sub-brands, but a bike is a whole different kettle of fish, let alone an e-gravel bike, which I imagine is going to be a pretty contentious thing. And even me, I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to tech. I kind of thought, why would you want that? Does that not kind of ruin that idea of purity with gravel riding and adventure riding? But I really enjoyed it. I can totally see why people would get into this, and for riders who are perhaps time poor more than anything else, the ability to go into longer distances and into more remote terrain with that little bit of e-assistance is a really promising idea. The handling of the bike is superb. The build is almost spot on, save for maybe those carbon cranks for the intended use. And I have to say, I think the Fazua system might just be the best one I've used yet. What do you think of a gravel e-bike? Are we muddying the waters of what makes gravel great, or is it a really good concept that could open up really interesting terrain to more riders? As always, please leave your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to like or subscribe.